Gross domestic product declined by 0.7%.
Official unemployment rate rose to 33.2% in the second quarter.
South Africa will be charged a tariff of 30% from the 1st of August.
2 years ago, South Africa was teetering on the edge. Rolling blackouts gripped the nation for more than 10 hours a day. Factories shut down, mines lay idle. Unemployment had soared past 40%. Youth unemployment hovered around 60%. And the economy was in freefall. Egypt had overtaken South Africa as Africa's largest economy for the first time in decades. For many, it felt like the inevitable collapse of one of Africa's most iconic nations. And then, something remarkable happened. By 2025, South Africa had clawed its way back to the top, reclaiming the #1 spot in Africa's economic rankings. But this isn't just a story of numbers or GDP. It's a tale of resilience, strategy, and leadership under pressure. It's the story of how a nation on the brink managed to arrest its decline, restore confidence, and set a path toward recovery. This is the blueprint for turning crisis into opportunity, and a glimpse into Africa's economic future. The collapse and crisis. In 2023, South Africa faced a crisis that many thought was beyond repair. Eskom, the state-owned power utility responsible for keeping the lights on across the nation, had failed spectacularly. Rolling blackouts, locally called load shedding, became a daily reality. Residents braced for 10+ hours without electricity. Factories couldn't run, mines ground to a halt, hospitals scrambled to keep essential services running on generators, and businesses either closed temporarily or relocated abroad. The consequences rippled through the economy. Egypt, long trailing behind South Africa, overtook it as Africa's largest economy. The tourism sector collapsed as international visitors canceled trips, frustrated by power instability. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the continent's financial heartbeat, saw declining confidence while capital flight surged. Wealthy South Africans sought safety abroad, and corporations hesitated to invest in a country that seemed to be teetering on the edge. The social impact was equally dire. Youth unemployment, already high, surged past 60%. Township communities went without power for weeks, and manufacturing orders that once supported livelihoods were canceled. Ordinary citizens faced harsh realities: rationed electricity, limited access to running water, and an uncertain future. Yet, even amidst despair, glimmers of ingenuity appeared. Entrepreneurs improvised with solar panels, small-scale generators, and alternative power sources to keep lights on and businesses afloat. These personal stories were small victories against a backdrop of national decline, but they hinted at the resilience that would eventually drive the country's recovery. South Africa's collapse wasn't just an economic event. It was a test of leadership, resourcefulness, and the nation's capacity to adapt under pressure. The energy turnaround. The crisis didn't resolve itself overnight. South Africa's rebound began with decisive action at the heart of the problem. Eskom. In early 2024, Dan Marikane was appointed CEO, tasked with a mission that seemed impossible: stabilize the nation's power supply while addressing systemic corruption, overwhelming debt, and decades of mismanagement. Marikane implemented ruthless efficiency measures. Maintenance schedules were overhauled, poorly performing management teams replaced, and long-neglected infrastructure received urgent attention. Load shedding, once a daily 10-hour ordeal, dropped to a manageable 1 to 2 hours in most urban areas. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to allow factories to run again, mines to resume operations, and small businesses to survive. Simultaneously, South Africa accelerated renewable energy projects. Large-scale solar farms and wind turbines were brought online faster than ever imagined, while private companies stepped in to provide backup power solutions. Facilities like gigawatt-independent power plants emerged as alternatives to the failing state utility. By combining public and private sector initiatives, the nation created a resilient, diversified energy system capable of supporting economic activity. Debt restructuring became another critical focus. Eskom had accumulated unsustainable debt over decades, leaving the government with few options. A combination of government intervention, cost recovery strategies, and partial privatization efforts stabilized the utility's finances, restoring confidence among investors and the general public alike. With energy stabilized, the path to economic recovery became possible. Egypt, previously seen as Africa's rising economic leader, experienced stagnation. Tourism revenue declined. The Suez Canal couldn't drive growth alone, and structural economic challenges slowed expansion. Meanwhile, South Africa capitalized on its newly stabilized environment. Mining, long the backbone of the South African economy, roared back to life. Gold, platinum, and diamonds resumed steady production, fueling exports and government revenues. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange regained momentum, drawing domestic and international investors. Tourism rebounded as the rand's favorable exchange rate combined with improved political stability. International visitors returned to Cape Town, safari destinations, and the wine regions of the Western Cape. GDP growth was modest, 1 to 1.5% in 2025, but after near collapse, it was momentum that counted. South Africa's rise wasn't just about numbers, it was about confidence. Businesses began to reinvest. Jobs returned where possible. Investors regained faith. Egypt, meanwhile, faltered in several key sectors, allowing South Africa to regain its position as Africa's top economy. The lesson is strategic. Recovery isn't always about massive growth. Sometimes it's about relative stability. South Africa's comeback offers lessons for any nation grappling with systemic collapse. First, crises force hard decisions. Eskom could no longer hide inefficiencies, and reform became inevitable. Leadership that communicates transparently restores trust, while decisive action, even if imperfect, prevents further decay. Second, diversification is key. South Africa didn't rely on one solution. Solar, wind, coal recovery, and private sector alternatives all contributed to functional energy availability. Third, partial privatization and competition drive efficiency. By enabling private companies to fill power gaps, South Africa leveraged market forces to supplement government shortcomings. Currency fluctuations played an unexpected role. The weaker rand boosted exports and made tourism more affordable for international visitors, drawing capital back into the economy. The recovery is real, but incomplete. Unemployment remains high at 42.6%, and youth unemployment exceeds 60%. Many businesses that closed during the blackouts have not reopened, leaving scars across the economy. Inequality persists, with wealthier South Africans benefiting disproportionately from the rebound. Infrastructure beyond energy, roads, schools, hospitals, remains underfunded and decayed. The real test lies in sustainability. Energy stability must be maintained. Growth must reach 3 to 4% in the coming years to solidify South Africa's position and make meaningful dents in unemployment. If this window is missed, the nation risks backsliding, with social unrest and economic fragility returning. Yet, the comeback offers hope. South Africa has shown it can act decisively, implement functional solutions, and restore confidence. Its resurgence positions it as Africa's economic anchor. The nation is not only reclaiming the top spot, it is shaping the continent's future. The next 2 to 3 years will determine whether this recovery is a permanent revival or a temporary pause. South Africa reclaimed Africa's crown by addressing one critical problem. But the larger challenges remain. The future depends on whether it can tackle unemployment, invest in infrastructure, and maintain growth. One thing is clear: the eyes of Africa and the world are watching. So, what can you do? First, share this video. Most people don't realize how much South Africa's story explains the future of global industry. Second, drop a comment. Do you think South Africa can reinvent itself for the 21st century, or is the world moving on? And third, subscribe. Because next week we're unpacking the factory wars. Which country will own Asia's future?